Hello everyone, I'm Alex Dykes, and this is a 2014 Nissan Rogue. This is an all-new model for the 2014 model year, and this particular trim is the SL trim. Now, if you've been to a Nissan dealer lately, you may be a little bit confused because you'll find two different Rogues right there on the Nissan dealer lot. You'll find this brand new Rogue, and you'll also find the same model as last year, sold as a 2014 Nissan Rogue Select. That Rogue Select is the last generation Nissan Rogue, and they'll be sold side by side for the 2014 model year only. Before we dive right on in, let's talk competition, because the Rogue competes in a very crowded and very competitive segment. As a result, I'll really only be talking about the four primary competitors to the Rogue: the Escape, the CR-V, the Equinox, and the RAV4. Those are the top four best-selling compact SUVs in America, and those are really the ones we'll be focusing on in this video. Up front, we have an attractive and more aggressive front end for 2014. It also looks an awful lot more grown-up than the Rogue Select that you'll find on the same dealer lot as this all-new Rogue. I have been quite partial to Nissan's styling direction lately, and that continues with this 2014 Rogue. Since we're in the SL trim, we have the LED daytime running lamps, which are this little LED strip right here along the inside and the bottom of the headlamp lens, and we also have the optional LED headlamps. These are full LED headlamps, LED high beams, and LED low beams, but these are only available as a package option in the SL trim. If the Rogue looks a little bigger to you from this dimension, you're not seeing things. The Rogue has grown for 2014 because it's now available as an optional 7-seat crossover vehicle. Compared to something like a Chevy Equinox, the Rogue is just a little bit smaller because the Equinox is absolutely enormous in this segment. However, it is larger than most of the other competitors. This 2014 model strikes an attractive side pose as well. You can see from this angle that we have a decent number of aero treatments going on in this vehicle. We have a new air splitter right here, and we have some small aero treatments right there in front of the rear tire, which I'll point out in a bit. We also have this trim line that goes right from the hood all the way down through the doors and out to the back. But right back here is the biggest difference for the 2014 model year, because this is now available as a 7-seat crossover vehicle, which means we get a third row seat right in back. In order to accommodate that, we had to have a more upright profile and a squarer profile in the rear. We also have a relatively vertical tailgate and rear glass compared to the 5-seat only crossovers available on the market. And again, that's really just to accommodate cargo as well as the 6th and 7th passengers inside the Rogue. That is an option, so by default the Rogue is a 5-passenger vehicle only, and the one that we're taking a look at right here is the 5-passenger version, but the 6th and 7th seats are available. Our SL model has the standard and very attractive 18-inch wheels, and right in front of the wheel you'll see this little aero finlet right here. This actually helps improve fuel economy, and if you've ever wondered why you see them in modern cars, that's really the reason that they're going on right there. Out back we have simple and elegant styling. I think it's a little bit plain as well. I think the Mazda CX-5 is the most attractive entry in this segment for me. However, I do rank this above the CR-V as well as the RAV4. Rather than locating the tailgate hatch right here above the license plate, Nissan's chose to place it right here below the license plate. I'd love to know what you think about this particular placement, because I find it a little less convenient than having it right here under the license plate. Below the tailgate latch you'll find an air vent. This helps relieve pressure from underneath the vehicle and helps improve fuel economy. Over here on the driver's side we have a single hidden exhaust tip. There's only one engine and one transmission available in the Rogue for 2014. It's a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine, produces 170 horsepower and 175 pound-feet of torque. Those torque and horsepower numbers compare very favorably to the Escape, the RAV4, as well as the CR-V. The Equinox does have the option of getting a 301 horsepower V6 engine, which is significantly more powerful than most of the entries in this segment. Of course, the Escape does also have the option of 2 different turbocharged engines should you want a little bit more shove in your Ford. The big difference between this car and its direct competitors is that the only transmission available is a CVT, or continually variable transmission. That's what helps this car, even though it weighs between 3,300 and 3,600 pounds, get 26 miles per gallon city, 33 on the highway, and a combined number of 28 miles per gallon overall. That's if you get the front-wheel drive version. For $1,350, there is also an optional all-wheel drive system, and that will lower your fuel economy by 1 mile per gallon across the board to 25 miles per gallon in the city, 32 on the highway. Strangely, if it doesn't seem to affect the EPA's combined fuel economy score, so the EPA still says it's about 28, I think it's really about 27. Either way you go, that's still very high for this segment. In fact, it's comparable to the Mazda CX-5 with the 2-liter engine, which is significantly less powerful than this. One thing to note is that Mazda CX-5 does get very good fuel economy. However, if you add the 2.5-liter engine, which produces about the same amount of power as this Rogue, then you're going to get about the same fuel economy. Front seat comfort is just above average for this segment. The seat isn't as adjustable as you'll find especially in the American competitors in this segment. This is an 8-way power adjustable seat. We have a 2-way power adjustable lumbar, and the seat moves in 6 different directions. That's really because the front of the seat cushion doesn't move up and down independently of the rear, and that makes it just a little bit less comfortable depending on your body type. We do have a tilt telescopic steering column with a decent range of motion. What helps this car get 7 out of 10 points up front, however, is that we have a decent amount of legroom and an awful lot of headroom. This is at the very top of its class in terms of total headroom and total legroom. That's when you take a look at headroom and legroom in the front, as well as headroom and legroom in the rear. Taking a look at those numbers holistically is important because although the Rogue doesn't score tops in rear legroom or tops in front legroom, when you add those two together, we are at the top of this segment because some of the other competitors will favor front legroom over rear legroom, but the total amount of legroom available in the car is lower. Rear seat comfort is excellent. These seat bottom cushions are higher off the floor than you'll find in a number of the competitors, and that really makes it an awful lot more comfortable in the back for adults. Kids may find that the seat bottom cushion is a little bit high off the floor for them, but it does result in much more usable legroom in the back. In a car where the seats are closer to the bottom, you'll find you need to be more reclined in order to fit your legs in the car. And as you can see, sitting behind myself, I have about 7 inches of legroom left here in the rear. If I move all the way over to this side, this front seat is all the way back in its track, suitable for a 6'5" passenger I had in the car. I still have about 1.5 inches of legroom left over here. This is a decent amount more than you'll find in most of the competition. In addition to the solid legroom numbers, I also have about 1 inch of headroom left if I sit upright in this seat. Now we are in the sunroof equipped model, and that does reduce the rear headroom by almost 2 inches in this car. So do keep in mind that if you're a taller driver or a taller passenger, you may want to ditch the sunroof for that headroom. To help make the third row possible, the second row seats do slide forward, as you can see right here. This is the furthest forward they slide, and they also recline. That's the most reclined position, and this is the most vertical position, which you would typically use simply to square off the cargo area so you can fit larger items in the car. As you can see, if I were to move this seat to the bare minimum for me at 6 feet tall, you could actually put someone 6 feet tall in the front, 6 feet tall in the middle, and in a real pinch, you may find that you could fit someone about 5'10" in the back. The major problem with the Rogue's third row is headroom. It is quite limited back there, so that third row should be regarded as the emergency back seat, the seat for children, or the seat for your mother-in-law. Cargo capacity and cargo practicality are 2 reasons often cited for buying a crossover vehicle, and the Rogue really excels in this area. We have 2 lids right here in our cargo area. This first one flips up to reveal an additional storage compartment right here under that floor. And it can also be lowered down in a lower position so that your entire cargo area can be taller. And then this rearward section, again, flips open so you can see what's under there. It lowers down to the same load floor as this front one, or you can put it in this upper position so you can have a second tier of luggage in your car. Depending on what kind of bags you're throwing in the back here, you can put luggage right there on top and a bag right there on the bottom in the Rogue. It really makes this awfully convenient in the back. If you're not putting a suitcase on top of this shelf and you're worried about your cargo rolling off, Nissan does provide little cargo stops to help keep your cargo from rolling around. You can, of course, use this in that position as well as when this is in the standard position right down here. If I can insert it in the slot, there we go. So it will work in both positions with this second tier in position as well. So it'll help keep things from rolling forward or from rolling back. They also conveniently store right here under this lid. The Rogue scores 9 out of 10 points in my exclusive trunk comfort index. It loses 1 point because we don't have a standard tonneau cover back here, and that is really something I do look for in a crossover or a wagon. This cargo area is extremely functional and extremely practical. It's also really quite large. You can fit 70 cubic feet of things inside the Rogue if you fold the second row seat down. 39.3 cubic feet of things behind the second row seat. And if you do opt for the 7-passenger version, then you need to know that you lose the spare tire and cargo capacity drops to just 9 cubic feet with that third row in place. And 9 cubic feet is just about the size where you could jam in one roller bag like this and maybe another small item like a purse or something along those lines. Since we're in the SL model, we have the power tailgate as well, which is always a feature I appreciate. Let's take a detailed look around the interior. We do have a manual day-night mode mirror. An automatic one is available as a dealer-installed accessory. We have a sunglass holder right there, and this is where you'll find the controls for this large panoramic moonroof as well as the automatic shade. So we click this little button right here. The shade automatically closes on that. Over here you'll find your reading lamps, Sun visors in the Rogue have a nice sliding feature, which I found very handy as well, and they're quite large, so it's easy to get a nice shading action with those visors. Both the driver and the front passenger have height adjustable seatbelts. If we move down to the door, we have a collection of hard and soft touch plastics, which is fairly normal for this segment. We have soft touch plastics up here, hard plastics right here, and on the door handle. Taking a closer look at the armrest, this is something that I really appreciated during this week with the Nissan Rogue. You can see how far this armrest really squishes in there. It's really thickly padded, which is something I appreciate. An awful lot of cars cut corners on the armrest, and I'd rather cut corners elsewhere in the vehicle and have a nice, comfortable armrest, because I am the kind of person that really does like to lean my elbow on it. Because we're in an SL model, we have perforated leather upholstery. Cloth seats are standard in all the other trims of the Rogue. The Rogue features a sizable glove box. We were easily able to accommodate a small laptop as well as tablet computers in there. We have hard touch plastics low in the dashboard. This is fake carbon fiber trim, and then we have a soft touch dashboard right up here. Because we're in the SL model with the optional Bose sound system, we also have a center channel speaker right there above these air vents. Optional on SV and standard on SL is this 7-inch color touchscreen infotainment system. If you want to know more about Nissan Connect, then go ahead and click that infotainment banner at the bottom of your screen to be transported on over to that review. We have keyless go right over here, dual zone climate control, and then below this you'll see the USB input and auxiliary input, as well as a 12-volt power outlet. I do wish the USB and auxiliary input were hidden away in some cubby somewhere, although this tray is sized appropriately for a smartphone. Moving back, we have a standard shifter and 2 large cup holders that were easily able to accommodate the largest takeout sodas we could throw at them. We have standard heated seats in our SL model right there behind that, and an additional little storage cubby. We have a relatively large center armrest. This could accommodate a gallon of milk, although the lid wouldn't close on that gallon. It is relatively deep, but it is smaller than you'll find in some of the competition. Over on the driver's side, we have a 4-dial instrument cluster with this large color information display right there in the middle. You can cycle between a wide variety of different screens. We have tire pressure monitoring. We also have the driver assistance monitoring. That's because this vehicle does offer blind spot warning, pre-collision warning, as well as lane departure warning. If we move out to the steering wheel, our SL model has this attractive leather-wrapped 3-spoke steering wheel. If you do opt for the other trims of the Rogue, you do end up with a urethane steering wheel. I think this is very attractive. It's also very logical and easy to use. We have our volume up-down buttons over here. These buttons control that screen right there in the middle. We have up and down for our tracks, source button, click to enter. Over here we have our cruise control buttons, cancel, accelerate, decelerate, on, off, and then here we have our Bluetooth phone controls. Bluetooth phone is standard on all models of the Rogue, including that base SL model. Nissan hides their bank of various buttons over here on the driver's left-hand side. That's where you'll find the sport button, power tailgate button, the all-wheel drive lock button, hill descent control, as well as a button that enables and disables all the warning systems in the car. Like most Nissans sold in America, the Rogue has a CVT under the hood, or a continuously variable transmission. Now, I know a lot of reviews out there deride this CVT, complaining about the noise or the way that the engine just revs up to a particular speed and then hangs out there. But there are a number of reasons that you actually want your engine to do that. First off, 0 to 60 acceleration is actually better in this Nissan Rogue than it is in a non-CVT vehicle, because the engine can rev up to its best power band and then just hang out there, rather than having to go in and out of its optimal power band as it shifts gears. Now, because of the people that complain about the way CVTs behave, Nissan has programmed this CVT to behave a little bit more like a traditional automatic. So if you floor this car as you're getting onto a freeway, you will notice some imitation shifts. It'll go up to about 6,500 RPM and then go back down to about 5,000 RPM and then go back up to 6,500 RPM and repeat. That actually is less efficient and less performance oriented than if the engine had just hung out at 6,500 RPM. And you can tell that because the Rogue will behave like a traditional CVT if you put it in low range. So if you just put the transmission in L and floor it, it'll go on up to 6,500 RPM and just hang out there. And if you do that, it's actually about 1/10 of a second faster to 60 than if you put it in drive and let it imitate a regular automatic shifts. Any way you slice it, 60 happens in the Rogue about 1/10 of a second faster than its direct competitors, and that would be the CR-V, the RAV4, the Equinox, as well as the Escape, and that's really thanks to this CVT. The other thing the CVT does for you is improve fuel economy, and it's really obvious when you take a look at our real-world MPG numbers in this car. The CVT can keep the engine in a more efficient RPM band more of the time than a traditional automatic. As a result, we've been averaging between 25 and 26 miles per gallon in this car over about 720 miles of very mixed driving. That does include 0 to 60 testing, a lot of mountain climbing, keeping in mind that my commute does go up and over a 2,200-foot mountain pass, and plenty of idling during photo shoots as well as video shoots. The SL model that we're testing right now is equipped with Nissan's latest pre-collision warning system. The system uses a radar sensor in the front bumper, and it will scan the distance between you and the car in front of you and alert you if it thinks you're going to collide with it. Unfortunately, unlike other systems out on the market, this one doesn't really have a very obvious warning indicator for you. It really just flashes a very small icon in the multi-information display that's located between the speedometer and the tachometer, and it will beep at you. So you do have to know what the car is beeping at you, in order for you to respond to it. The beep is a little bit different than the blind spot warning beep or the lane departure warning beep, however. Unlike other systems that also use a radar sensor in the front bumper, the Rogue does not offer radar cruise control at any price. The rest of the safety systems in this vehicle use the wide-angle camera that's also used by the backup camera system as well as the all-around camera system. It's located in the rear hatch and it scans the road around you. It uses a computer to determine where the vehicle is in regard to the lane lines, and it also scans for traffic around you for blind spot warning and blind spot information. The car will beep at you if you try and change lanes into a car next to you, and it will also give you a little alert in the form of a colored LED right here in the A pillar to let you know that there's something in your blind spot. Overall, the system isn't quite as effective as the radar-based systems because the field of view is a little bit more limited. So if a car is immediately next to you, it won't alert you like some of those other systems. The car really has to be in your true blind spot, like that white car that's over there on my left that I can barely see in my side view mirror. The car is alerting me about that now, and if I turn on my turn signal, it will beep at me and flash the LED in the A pillar. Out on my favorite country road, the Rogue disappointed me just a little bit at the beginning. And that's not necessarily the fault of the car, I think it's the fault of the TV advertisements. Because in the TV ad for this car, they have someone driving the Rogue around sportily, they're jutting around town, they're jumping on train cars, jumping off roofs, etc. So for some reason in my mind, I thought that Nissan was going for more of a Mazda CX-5 competitor, going for something like the best handling vehicle in the segment. In truth, there's nothing wrong with the Rogue's handling, it's just that it's relatively average, maybe upper middle of the pack for this compact crossover segment. That's a very good place to be. Nissan designed the Rogue to be a very middle-of-the-road competitor. The suspension is neither too firm nor too soft, and the handling abilities are definitely very middle-of-the-road. This handles better than something like a Toyota RAV4 or a Jeep Cherokee, but it doesn't handle quite as well as that Mazda CX-5. Likewise, the suspension is very well sorted. It doesn't feel uncomposed over broken pavement. It handles corners appreciably well. It's not as soft as something like a Cherokee or an Equinox, but it is less firm than something like a Mazda CX-5. Nissan spent a decent amount of time quieting the cabin for 2014, and it really shows with a 68.5 decibel rating at 50 miles an hour. Part of the reason I like continuously variable transmissions is that I do a decent amount of mountain driving like the road that we're on right now. And if you're going to have a relatively heavy crossover vehicle with a relatively small 4-cylinder engine, a CVT really makes the car more drivable than if you had a traditional 5 or 6-speed automatic transmission. This transmission always has the right ratio for you, and it makes hill climbing an awful lot easier because the car can just continuously vary that ratio to keep you at a constant speed. If I were in a regular 5 or 6-speed automatic, this car would be doing an awful lot of shifting with this engine. And it would also be doing an awful lot of slowing down on the steeper portions of the road. It would slow down, then the car would downshift and you'd speed up, and then it would upshift again and then you'd slow down again. And it just doesn't do that with a CVT. It actually makes things an awful lot smoother and an awful lot more drivable. On the downside, despite having a sport mode and a low range mode, which will keep the engine at a higher RPM band for better performance, CVTs are just not the sporting option. Also, Honda's brand new CVT that we find under the hood of the Civic and the Accord is much faster shifting than this transmission. So it shifts ratios much faster, much better for passing performance, as well as feel out on the road. This transmission does tend to have slight rubber bandy feel, and what most people mean by that is if you're flooring the car and you're at full throttle acceleration and then you let off on the throttle, you get this moment of more acceleration than less acceleration, and then the engine will downshift again. It is a little bit unusual, but it's something that most of the CVTs out on the market all do. The ones from Audi, the ones from Nissan, and the ones from Subaru all have that same feel to them. However, the brand new Honda CVT does not feel like that. Honda's not putting that in the CR-V yet, but we do expect it at some point soon. Even though the Rogue doesn't have the same ground clearance as some of the entries in this segment, the road that we're on right now is fairly rough. This is probably one of the worst roads that anybody with a crossover will ever take their vehicle on, and the Rogue does very well for this segment. That's because we have a well-designed suspension and a decent amount of wheel articulation, so the wheels have a decent amount of motion with them in the suspension that really helps on these really potholed roads that we're on right now. Also, the suspension also feels very sorted at all times, and the all-wheel drive system is very quick acting around the corners and around the potholes on this road. This is probably the worst kind of road that most crossover shoppers will ever go on. It's fairly potholed, it's missing pavement in a decent amount of sections, and it's got a lot of gravel going on, a lot of leaves, etc. This is a really good test for a crossover like this. The all-wheel drive system in the Rogue reacts very quickly. It actually reacts more quickly than something like a Jeep Cherokee when the Cherokee is in its auto mode, because the Cherokee actually has to reconnect the rear axle, and the Rogue doesn't have to do that. Now, in real off-roading situations, the Cherokee's all-wheel drive system will be much more robust and much more capable than this, but for the average person, it really just doesn't matter. The somewhat lower ground clearance figures in the Rogue also don't matter much, because out on these roads, suspension travel, suspension articulation, and suspension design are just more important. And the Rogue does really well in these categories. It really feels very composed over these very potholed roads and these dips and turns and roots that are sticking out in the road. The Rogue just feels very composed over everything. Despite some initial disappointment based on my own expectations of what I thought the Rogue should be out on the road, I actually give this car 8.5 points out of 10 because the Rogue is very, very well balanced. And I'm not talking about driving dynamics balanced. I'm talking about a good balance between performance, handling, off-road ability, fuel economy, etc. That's really where the Rogue shines. It's just one of the best balanced entries in this segment all the way around. Nissan has been known for value pricing, and that continues for the 2014 Rogue. Things start out at $22,490 for the front-wheel drive S model that does have an automatic transmission, not a manual like you'll find with something like a Mazda CX-5. $24,290 gets you the middle model, the SV model. $28,070 gets you the top-end SL model that's in front-wheel drive. And then if you fully load your SL model up, you end up at $30,920 for the front-wheel drive model and $31,535 for the all-wheel drive model, as we're testing right here. My favorite configuration would be the SV model with the family package, which is the 7-seat option, as well as the premium package. That would give me the Nissan Connect system, the all-around view camera, lane departure warning, blind spot warning, the power tailgate, as well as heated mirrors. While there are some cheaper options out there, the Rogue is among the least expensive in this segment and is a decent amount less than its most direct competitors. It's about $500 less than a Honda CR-V, about $1,000 less than a RAV4 or Escape, and a full $2,000 less than a Chevy Equinox. I think that the Rogue's handsome good looks, this absolutely ginormous cargo area, the option of a third-row seat, and absolutely excellent fuel economy make the 2014 Rogue one of the best values in this small crossover segment. Well, I think that I do like the Escape just a little bit better. I think I like the feature set going on in the Escape. You do pay an awful lot more for that Ford. I also like the Mazda CX-5 for its driving dynamics, but it's not as good of a value when you actually look at how things price out feature for feature Mazda versus this Nissan. I also like the Jeep Cherokee, but the Cherokee is a decent amount more expensive and you lose an awful lot of cargo area in addition to not having the option of that third row seat. The Rogue is a vehicle that I can strongly recommend. If you're shopping in this segment, you should definitely put the Nissan Rogue on your shopping list, especially if you need that third row seat. Well, I think that I might buy the Jeep Cherokee before I bought the Nissan Rogue. I really don't need that third row seat, so it really depends on how much value you place on that third row seat. You also need to keep in mind that the Cherokee isn't as good on-road as the Rogue, and it does have a much smaller cargo area. You'll notice up in the corner of your screen, I now have a number score for the 2014 Nissan Rogue. This is something I'm trying out, so be sure and comment in the comment section and let me know how you like that. You can also find me at facebook.com. Go ahead and like this video, comment on this video, tell me what you liked and didn't like about the video, about the Nissan Rogue in general, or if you have any other ideas about future videos. You can also email me at alex@alexandautos.com, and we'll see you next week.